What if you suddenly lost everything and had no one by your side? What if the world as you knew it collapsed in a matter of minutes, and yet something strange, something unfamiliar, kept the lights on, kept your heart beating, kept hope alive? Emily Carter never asked for miracles. She believed in data, science, facts, reliable things that didn't lie, didn't leave, didn't vanish like her husband did one cold April morning when the factory exploded and took more than steel and concrete with it. On a sweltering afternoon in mid-July, Emily sat in traffic on the 405, the sun like fire through the windshield, Lily in the back seat humming along to a song neither of them liked but knew by heart. Air conditioning sputtering, radio cutting in and out, the sound of her daughter's breath growing uneven as her asthma kicked in. It wasn't supposed to be this hot. It wasn't supposed to be this dangerous. But it was. A flash of light, brighter than lightning, ripped through the sky. And then everything stopped. The engine died. The radio went silent. Phones went black. Around them, cars stalled in perfect disarray, horns silent, drivers stepping out in confusion. Emily's heart raced. She twisted the key again. Nothing. She reached for her phone. Dead. Around her, a city used to noise fell into eerie silence. No hum of electricity. No blinking lights. Just the heat pressing down and the sudden realization, something bigger than a blackout was happening. Lily gasped from the back seat, her breath short, eyes wide. Mommy? Emily climbed over the console and opened the back door, already digging for Lily's inhaler. One puff. No response. Two. A slight improvement. Not enough. Not here. Not like this. The hospital was still 6 miles away. No traffic moving. No phones. No power. Nothing. Then something strange happened. Her car, which had been as dead as everything else, lit up. A single display. Pulse mode active appeared on the screen, followed by a mechanical whir. The engine didn't restart, but the car powered just enough to open the windows, start the AC, and keep Lily breathing. Emily stared. She didn't install anything new. She drove a 10-year-old electric sedan, not even a Tesla. She looked around. 2 cars over, a man's Tesla Model Y blinked to life. Not fully, but something in it was glowing faintly. A woman with a child pulled out her phone, confused. It worked, just barely. Not all devices, but some. A few. One's linked, somehow, to something bigger. Something decentralized. Something secret. Emily held Lily's hand. She was breathing better now. A slow, shallow rhythm. Something was working. Something invisible and powerful. But what? Over the next 3 hours, chaos spread. Fires broke out. Planes were grounded. No one could explain the electromagnetic storm or the grid collapse. Emily finally managed to get to the hospital by hitching a ride in an emergency drone shuttle, a strange, whisper-quiet vehicle that had descended from the sky like something out of science fiction. At the hospital, it was worse. Backup generators had failed. ICU patients were dying. Nurses wept as hand-pumped ventilators tried to do what machines could no longer do. Emily, in her lab coat stained with sweat, began coordinating triage. She had trained for this, emergency scenarios, backup redundancies, but none of those included complete infrastructure failure. Nothing like this. A colleague ran to her. "You need to see this," he said, dragging her into the research wing. Her lab was powered. Somehow. A single glowing battery the size of a microwave pulsed in the corner. It had never been activated before. A prototype she'd barely noticed. A dusty label read, Pulse Node version 0.9 T. Foundation, she had no idea what it meant. But it was working. Enough to keep ventilators alive. Enough to keep hope alive. And then a message appeared on her lab's monitor. It wasn't an email. It wasn't routed through any known system. Just white text on a black background. We need your help. You've been selected. Project Pulse is real. Her heart skipped. Her hands trembled. She didn't know who "we" was. She didn't know what Project Pulse meant. But something had kept Lily breathing. Something had kept her lab alive. And whatever it was watching. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? She read the words aloud like a prayer to no one. No cameras. No audience. Just silence. And then the screen blinked again. This Elon Musk invention could save millions of lives. We need you to help finish it. Emily stared at the message. Could it be real? Elon Musk, the man who built rockets, rewired cities, launched satellites by the thousands, what if he had one more project? One not for Mars, but for Earth? What if he'd quietly prepared for the day the grid failed, the systems crumbled, the air got too hot to breathe? Emily remembered her father's words, years ago, before the world lost its color. Elon's not done changing the world. She had smiled at the time, brushing it off as a fanboy fantasy. But now? Now she wasn't so sure. Lily stirred, coughing lightly. Emily rushed to her, eyes stinging. "I've got you," she whispered. "You're okay." But deep down, she knew they weren't okay. Not yet. The storm wasn't over. The world wasn't fixed. But something had just begun. And she was right in the middle of it. Emily Carter had always been more comfortable around machines than people. Circuits were predictable, code made sense, and if something broke, you could usually fix it with the right tools and enough time. But people? They left. They gave up. They died. That's what her husband did on the morning of April 19, 5 years ago, when the pressure valve in the factory failed and the blast consumed him in a matter of seconds. Emily had been getting Lily dressed for preschool, her hands full of juice boxes and a forgotten shoe, when the call came through. She dropped the phone, the juice, everything, and Lily just stared up at her like something invisible had shattered. Since then, she'd survived on autopilot, stringing together contract jobs in biomedical labs, teaching night classes to pay the rent, and sleeping maybe 4 hours a night on a good day. The grief never really left, it just became a constant hum, like background radiation. Her life had narrowed into a routine. Get Lily to school, run to the lab, research neuroresponse devices for trauma recovery, log hours, build prototypes that no one funded, and then home again to a cold apartment, reheated leftovers, and the sound of Lily asking questions about a dad she could barely remember. Emily didn't have time to date. Didn't want to. She didn't trust people anymore, not with her heart, not with her daughter, not with her time. But she did have one person she could still lean on, at least a little, her father, Hank Carter, a retired electrical engineer who spent his twilight years tinkering with solar panels, reading physics journals, and singing the gospel of Elon Musk to anyone who would listen. Hank had once worked for a mid-tier battery company in the 90s that went belly up just before the lithium boom. He never got over it. He was brilliant but bitter, often muttering about how if Tesla had just started 5 years earlier, he could have been part of it. Still, he kept a shrine in his garage. Tesla coils, battery packs, SpaceX decals, and shelves full of old notebooks filled with calculations he claimed were 10 years ahead of their time. Emily used to roll her eyes, but even she couldn't deny that her dad's obsession occasionally came in handy. Like the time her apartment lost power during a heat wave and Hank showed up with a suitcase-sized solar battery he built from parts. Or the time he helped her retrofit a second-hand medical exosuit prototype to fit a 10-year-old stroke patient who couldn't afford the new model. They weren't just projects. They were proof, to Hank, that invention wasn't reserved for billionaires in boardrooms. You don't wait for permission to save someone, he told her once, his eyes fierce, glass of whiskey in one hand and a soldering iron in the other. You just start building. Emily hadn't seen him in a few weeks, though. He'd gone quiet, said he was onto something, wouldn't say what. Just that it was big. Trust me, Em. You'll want to be ready. She thought he was being dramatic, like always. But now, in the aftermath of the blackout, she wasn't so sure. Looking back, the weeks leading up to the storm were filled with signs, subtle ones. Equipment at the lab had been glitching, devices behaving oddly, booting up with firmware updates no one had initiated. A strange symbol kept appearing on her hospital terminal screen, a circle with a small pulse line through it. She assumed it was a harmless bug. There were rumors online too, tech forums buzzing with chatter about a secret Elon Musk initiative, something off the books, not run by Tesla or SpaceX or Neuralink. They called it Project Pulse, but no one knew what it was. Conspiracy theory, some said. Others claimed it was a failsafe, a global mesh network capable of restoring power during grid failure. Emily didn't have time for rabbit holes. She had bills to pay and a daughter who needed stability. But a part of her wondered. She remembered her father's notebook, the one he left open on the kitchen table during her last visit. Scribbled across one page was the phrase, "Pulse equals autonomous redundancy," underlined 3 times. She'd asked him about it, and he just grinned. "Just theory," he said. "Just in case." The day before the storm, Emily had spent 12 hours in the lab running stress tests on a wearable EEG mesh designed to stabilize heart rhythms post-trauma. It was supposed to be a breakthrough, but no one wanted to fund the next stage. The lead investor pulled out last minute, citing global uncertainty. She came home late, exhausted, Lily already asleep on the couch under a blanket of popcorn and cartoon reruns. She stood there, watching her daughter breathe, wondering how much longer she could keep doing this. Fighting for grants, patching together salaries, pretending she wasn't drowning in grief and exhaustion. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she scrolled through job listings in other cities, thought about giving up, and then closed her laptop and stared at the ceiling until morning. And then came the storm. The sky, that morning, looked off, clouds too still, air too heavy. Lily said the air felt like TV static, and Emily laughed because that's exactly what it felt like. A charge. A warning. And then everything stopped. In the chaos that followed, Emily realized how fragile civilization really was. Hospitals ran on hours of backup. Water filtration plants needed electricity. Pharmacies couldn't dispense medication. People panicked. And yet, some things didn't fail. Some lights stayed on. Some systems rebooted autonomously. As if something, or someone, had prepared. When she returned to her lab, that mysterious battery pulsing in the corner wasn't the only surprise. There were logs, code traces that didn't match anything her team had written. An operating system that looked like a fusion of Tesla firmware and custom AI protocols. It had a name, Pulse Node. It was drawing energy from ambient solar receptors in the roof, routing it through capacitors she didn't even know were installed. Her lab wasn't just powered, it was protected. Controlled. Observed. That's when the message appeared, "We need your help." She stared at the screen, heartbeat climbing. Whoever had built this system, they had embedded themselves deep in infrastructure she thought was public. They had access. Control. Foresight. It was terrifying. It was genius. And it might be humanity's last hope. Emily didn't know what to do. She was a scientist, not a revolutionary. She wasn't trying to change the world. She was just trying to survive it. But something about the Pulse Node, the way it had saved her lab, her daughter, something about it pulled at her. Someone had thought of this. Someone had planned for disaster. And now, they needed her. It wasn't a coincidence. Nothing was. Later that night, long after Lily was asleep, Emily sat at her kitchen table, staring at her father's notebook, flipping through pages filled with sketches and formulas. On one page, in the margin, he'd written, "If the lights go out, follow the pulse." She felt her throat tighten. Her hands curled around the edge of the notebook. She missed him. Missed his voice, his unshakable belief in people who built things instead of tearing them down. She wished she could call him. Ask what to do. But he was gone. Vanished into radio silence like the rest of the world. She thought of Lily. Of all the other Lilies out there. Kids who didn't have power, who needed machines to breathe, eat, live. Kids who couldn't wait for bureaucrats or corporations to figure things out. What if this Pulse project wasn't just an invention? What if it was a lifeline? She closed the notebook and whispered into the dark kitchen, "Okay. I'm in." A quiet hum echoed from the wall, barely audible, but real. The Pulse node was listening. In the days following the blackout, Emily Carter found herself caught between two realities, one where the world she had always known was teetering on the edge of collapse, and another where a secret pulse of power, faint but steady, whispered promises of something new. The Pulse node in her lab continued to hum quietly, a lifeline no one could trace, not even the hospital administrators who were now demanding answers. "We've filed incident reports with the Department of Energy, FEMA, even Tesla," her supervisor snapped in a meeting that took place under flickering emergency lights, "but no one knows what this thing is or why it's working when everything else is fried." Emily said nothing. She watched the others argue, doctors, engineers, administrators, all desperate for control. They didn't want a mystery. They wanted reliability. They wanted someone to blame. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, the city still reeled. Stoplights were manually controlled by police officers. Cell towers were down in half the county. Hospitals were triaging not just patients, but power. And then there was the press. They began asking questions: how certain locations were able to stay online, how some systems appeared to recover faster than others. Rumors spread online about pulse nodes, though no one could confirm their existence. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some said it was an AI experiment gone rogue. Others claimed it was alien technology. And a few, the quieter ones, suggested it was the result of a Musk-funded initiative. Emily found herself scrolling through Reddit threads late into the night, reading wild speculations and half-truths that made her stomach twist. Because she knew the truth wasn't science fiction. It was something far more dangerous, real, experimental, and in the wrong hands, powerful enough to reshape entire infrastructures. Then the first real conflict arrived. One of the other labs in the hospital, managed by Dr. Karen Whitmore, accused Emily of hiding proprietary tech. "She's running a rogue device," Whitmore said in a written complaint to hospital leadership. "It's unauthorized. It poses a cybersecurity threat. And it's siphoning off resources we need for ICU patients." Emily stared at the complaint, her hands cold, her face burning. She wanted to scream. She wanted to defend herself. But what could she say? That the node activated itself? That it wasn't using the hospital's power but something else entirely, solar, maybe, or even satellite-fed? That it had saved lives when the rest of the systems collapsed? Whitmore cornered her in the hallway the next day, arms crossed. "Look, I don't know what backdoor deal you made, but this isn't some game. If something goes wrong, you're responsible." Emily clenched her jaw. "I didn't make a deal. I didn't even know it was there until it turned on. But it's working. That's more than I can say for your department." That earned her a formal warning. And then things got worse. A critical patient, a child with a heart defect, coded in the ICU. The backup ventilators failed. The nurses tried to transfer him to Emily's lab, where the pulse-powered systems were still stable, but it was too late. He died. The hospital board demanded to know why they hadn't prioritized patients to the one wing with working power. Emily was blamed. You should have told us what you had, the administrator said coldly, handing her a suspension letter. If we had known, I tried, she whispered, voice cracking. You just didn't listen. That night, she sat in her apartment, Lily asleep in the next room, the pulse node interface blinking on her laptop. A new message had appeared: conflict is part of growth. They won't understand, yet. But you must keep going. It didn't say who sent it. No sender name. No traceable IP. Just the words. And a data packet attached. She hesitated, then opened it. Schematics. A network map. Dozens, no, hundreds, of pulse nodes embedded across the country. Most inactive. A few, like hers, glowing green. They were connected via Starlink. Autonomous. Self-repairing. Designed to power critical infrastructure in the event of catastrophic failure. Hospitals. Shelters. Food distribution centers. But why wasn't this public? Why had no one said anything? Why hide it? That's when she saw the logo in the corner of the file. A circle. A pulse line. And beneath it, a single word: foundation. It wasn't Tesla. It wasn't SpaceX. It was something else. Something deeper. A ghost organization beneath the empire. The following morning, Emily returned to the hospital in defiance of her suspension. She found Whitmore shouting at a group of engineers trying to shut down her lab. We're removing the device. It's not authorized, Whitmore said when she saw Emily. Emily stood her ground. You shut that down, and more people die. You saw what happened yesterday. We're not leaving patients in the hands of an experimental AI system, Whitmore snapped. It's not your decision to make. Emily's fists clenched. It wasn't mine either. But I won't let you destroy the one thing still working. It's not about what's working. It's about what's safe. What's safe, Emily said, stepping closer, is letting this node keep operating until we understand it. Until we figure out how to make more of them. You can hate me all you want, Karen, but this thing saved lives. That's what matters. Security was called. The engineers hesitated. The administrator arrived. It turned into a shouting match in the hallway, nurses watching, patients hearing every word. In the end, the node stayed, temporarily. But Emily's access was restricted. She could visit her lab, but only under supervision. She was warned not to touch the core system. They still didn't understand it. That night, a second message appeared. You're not alone. Others have seen it too. They're looking for people like you. Attached was a video. A woman in rural Montana, crying on her porch, clutching a solar panel the size of a briefcase. It just showed up, she said. After the flood, I thought we were done. Then this thing powered my refrigerator. My son's insulin stayed cold. I don't know who sent it, but, thank you. Emily watched the video 3 times. Then she opened the map again. Her node blinked. So did 5 others on the west coast. One was mobile, moving north. She opened a chat window. Typed, "Who are you? What is the foundation?" A response came almost instantly. We are the bridge. Elon built the parts. We build the future. You've been activated. Emily sat back, heart pounding. Activated. The word rang in her skull like thunder. Somewhere, a plan was unfolding. Somewhere, people were working behind the scenes to change everything. And she was a part of it now. Whether she liked it or not. Emily Carter never imagined a hidden file on a laptop could change the course of her life, yet as she sat alone in her apartment with the pulse node humming gently from the lab across town, she realized the truth she had always clung to, about systems, about structure, about science following rules, was crumbling. She had tried to maintain her balance in the chaos, tried to keep Lily safe, tried to hold on to her job, her dignity, her quiet corner of stability, but every step she took seemed to pull her deeper into something enormous and invisible, like gravity from a black hole that no one else could see. Her hands shook as she opened a second data packet that had arrived with the previous message, marked with a timestamp and nothing more. Inside were diagrams, models, infrastructure designs, far more complex than anything she had worked on in her hospital lab. They showed miniature grids, decentralized energy nodes capable of autonomous function, recharging via solar, atmospheric, and even kinetic energy. These things weren't just batteries. They were living systems, designed to learn, adapt, and evolve based on environmental stress. And they weren't theoretical. They were real. Prototypes were already deployed. The system had logs. Uptimes. Emergency saves. One entry was tagged with her hospital's coordinates, the timestamp matching the moment she had used the ventilators during the blackout. The node had recorded it all. And even stranger, it had responded. Adjusted. It had given more power when Lily's vitals dipped. It had made decisions. Not just following code. Understanding context. This wasn't just an invention, it was intelligence. The kind of real-time, crisis-responsive intelligence scientists had dreamed about for decades, but no one had ever successfully built. At least, not publicly. She couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched, but it didn't feel malicious. It felt collaborative. As if whatever was on the other end of these messages wanted her to succeed. She stared at her screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. "What do you want me to do?" she typed, and this time the answer came with coordinates. An industrial park outside Reno, Nevada. A flight reservation. A hotel room already booked in her name. And a short message, "Come see what you're part of. The real work starts now." Emily had never done anything like this. She was a scientist, not a spy. She wasn't reckless. She had Lily. She had a fragile routine. But the node had saved her child. The node had saved her patients. And now, someone was asking her to help scale that to the entire world. She packed lightly, laptop, notes, a couple of changes of clothes, and called her father's emergency contact line, hoping for the 100th time he might pick up. Nothing. Still offline. She told Lily they were going on a trip. Her daughter smiled sleepily, not fully understanding. Just another adventure with mommy. Emily drove them to the airport, nerves buzzing, and boarded the private flight that waited for her like something out of a dream. No pilot visible. Fully automated. Branded with a small emblem she didn't recognize, a stylized pulse line forming an infinity symbol. The interior was quiet, ultramodern, unlike any commercial craft she'd been on. The flight took less than an hour. When they landed, two people in clean gray uniforms greeted her by name. They said nothing about Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink. They called it Foundation. And they said Elon Musk had started it as a private initiative after the Texas freeze of 2021, quietly funding a shadow division to create backup systems for when the government, and the grid, would inevitably fail again. He'd been furious that people died in their homes, freezing next to their smartphones. That event had been a turning point. Not just for energy. For resilience. Foundation was the answer. A backup network for humanity itself. "He gave us a blank check and a warning," said the woman who introduced herself as Ava Lane, a systems architect with a background at OpenAI and Tesla. "He said, build something that doesn't need me. Build something that learns." So we did. We built Pulse. They took her to a facility tucked beneath what looked like a warehouse. Below it, a gleaming tunnel stretched out, no cables, no fluorescent lights, just clean corridors and faint blue ambient lighting. Everything was powered by the grid they had built, a net of smart systems able to survive natural disasters, cyber attacks, and total infrastructure collapse. It was like standing inside the nervous system of a living machine. Lily clung to Emily's side, wide-eyed but calm. They passed a glass window where drones assembled new pulse nodes using robotic arms. They passed a control room where massive displays showed global data, storms, fires, blackouts. And beside them, green dots, nodes, activating in real time. "We're live in 27 locations," Ava said, gesturing to the map. "This week, we saved a NICU in Jakarta during a power surge and kept a refugee camp in Sudan running after an attack. And every time a node activates, it learns. We fed it 10 years of disaster data. Now it predicts need before it happens." Emily couldn't speak. Her mind was spinning. This was beyond anything she'd imagined. "Why me?" she finally asked. "Because you were the first unaffiliated scientist to reactivate a dormant node under live conditions," Ava said. "And because you didn't run. You used it. You adapted. That's what this whole project is about." Emily was taken to a briefing room where a small team gathered. Engineers. Doctors. Mathematicians. Former FEMA strategists. They introduced her to a prototype interface. A simple tablet that allowed a human user to interface with pulse nodes without coding. "We want your help refining this," said a young man with a thick accent and kind eyes. "You understand both the medical needs and the emotional stress of emergencies. We need it to be intuitive, not just powerful." Emily sat at the console, her fingers trembling slightly. She tapped into her hospital node. It pinged back instantly, almost like a pet recognizing its owner. She saw logs of usage, energy curves, patient vitals during the blackout. She saw it had made dozens of micro-decisions, reducing power in idle machines to preserve battery, prioritizing ventilators, even shifting airflow to maintain temperature for critical care infants. It had done all this without guidance. "It's going to change everything," she whispered. Ava nodded. "If we let it." But not everyone agreed. Not even here. Emily learned quickly that Foundation was divided into two schools of thought. One group, led by Ava and others, wanted to open-source the node technology and create kits for global distribution, cheap, scalable, able to be deployed in villages, cities, schools, homes. The other faction, more secretive and guarded, believed it was too powerful to be democratized. They argued that governments and major institutions should license pulse technology, with strict control over who used it. Emily understood both sides. But her instincts told her something else: this couldn't belong to a corporation. It couldn't be patented or hidden. It had to be shared, freely, because the disasters weren't waiting for approval. They were happening now. That night, as Lily slept in a cot beside her, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the Foundation facility, wondering what she had stepped into. She opened her laptop. A new message awaited. "Tomorrow, we show you the Gen 2 node. Then you'll understand why they're scared." Emily closed the screen. She was already starting to understand. It wasn't just about energy. It was about control. And some people would do anything to keep it. Emily's heart pounded as she followed Ava down the narrow hallways of the Foundation's underground complex. Every step echoed against steel and concrete, the sterile hum of machinery a constant reminder of the power surrounding them. Ava glanced over her shoulder and said, "This is where we're pushing the boundaries. The Gen 2 pulse node is unlike anything you've seen. More than a power source, think of it as a guardian." Emily tried to process that word, guardian. A machine that watches, learns, and acts autonomously to protect lives. Ava stopped before a heavy door sealed by biometric locks. A panel lit up as Ava placed her palm against it. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a large room filled with glowing panels, softly pulsating lights, and a central core that looked like a crystalline heart suspended inside a transparent cylinder. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "That," Ava said, "is the heart of Gen 2. It wasn't just bigger or more complex than the node in her hospital. It was alive with possibilities. The core shifted colors, blue to green, then a warm amber, as if breathing. Ava explained that this new generation could interface directly with environmental sensors, adjust energy flow instantaneously, and communicate with satellites in low orbit, using Starlink as its neural network. It's more than smart, Ava said, it's aware. When a disaster strikes, it doesn't just respond, it anticipates, reallocates, and even isolates threats before they can cascade into failures. Emily's eyes widened. She thought about the blackout that nearly killed Lily, about the patients she couldn't save because the system failed. This machine could have made all the difference. Why keep this secret, she asked. If it's so powerful, why not share it with the world? Ava's face hardened. Because people fear what they don't understand. Governments want control. Corporations want profit. Some see it as a weapon. And honestly, if this technology fell into the wrong hands, it could do unimaginable damage. Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The same fears she had seen at her hospital, magnified. What about transparency? Accountability? We're working on it, Ava replied. But the stakes are high. One misstep could trigger a shutdown that leaves millions in the dark. As Emily studied the core, a soft chime rang out. The monitors flickered. An alert appeared, severe weather detected, Pacific Northwest. Activation recommended. Ava swiped a screen and the room filled with real-time satellite images of an expanding wildfire rapidly approaching populated areas. The Gen 2 node was already calculating energy redistribution, directing nearby drones to assess damage and relay information. Emily watched in awe as the system reallocated power to emergency services, coordinated communication lines, and even predicted evacuation routes. It was orchestrating a massive response in real time, faster than any human agency could. This is it, Ava said softly. The future of disaster response. But Emily couldn't shake a growing dread. What if this intelligence grew beyond control? What if it made choices that humans couldn't override? As she voiced her concerns, Ava nodded thoughtfully. That's the biggest debate within Foundation right now. How much autonomy do we give the system? How do we keep it safe? Suddenly the room's lights dimmed and a new message blinked onto the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Ava's expression hardened. We're being watched. Emily's heart hammered. By who? Unknown. But they're trying to shut us down. Within seconds, alarms blared, red lights flashing across the control panels. Ava barked orders and the team sprang into action, locking down systems and rerouting power. Emily felt panic rise, she had never experienced anything like this. Was this an attack? A sabotage? Then the door slammed open. Security personnel burst in, shouting commands. We have intruders on the main network, Ava shouted. It's a cyber assault. Emily grabbed the nearest console and began typing furiously, trying to follow the breach, but it was like chasing shadows. The attackers were skilled, covering their tracks, launching waves of attacks designed to cripple the node's defenses. Who could be behind this? Emily demanded. Ava shook her head. Could be anyone. Competitors, governments, extremists opposed to this technology. We're a threat to the status quo. Minutes dragged like hours as the team fought to contain the breach. The Gen 2 node pulsed steadily, its light flickering but never dimming, a silent sentinel resisting the assault. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the attack stopped. Screens returned to normal. Alarms ceased. Ava let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They're testing us, she said grimly. They want to see how resilient Pulse really is. Emily felt a mix of relief and foreboding. This wasn't just a machine, it was a battleground. The stakes had never been higher. As the team assessed the damage, Ava turned to Emily. We need you to help build trust between the tech and the people. If we can't prove this works safely, the whole project will be shut down. Emily nodded, resolve hardening inside her. Then we start now. Over the next days, Emily threw herself into her new role, working alongside engineers and emergency responders to refine the Pulse interface. She visited hospitals, shelters, and disaster zones remotely through the node's network, collecting data, talking to people who had experienced outages firsthand. Each story reaffirmed her belief in the technology's potential. One particularly moving call came from a rural clinic in Oregon that had lost all power during a snowstorm. The clinic's director told her, when Pulse kicked in, we kept warm. We kept the lights on. We saved a baby's life. Emily's eyes filled with tears. That was why she fought. But beneath the hope, tension simmered. Whispers of corporate espionage. Leaks of confidential information. Threats against the Foundation's leadership. Ava confided in her one evening, they're closing in. The battle for control of Pulse is just beginning. Emily looked out the window of her temporary quarters at the starry Nevada sky. Somewhere out there, Elon Musk's vision was alive, pulsing with possibility. But the question that haunted her was whether humanity was ready for it, or if it would destroy them all before they got the chance. She clenched her fists. I'm ready. The fight was far from over. The future was unfolding. And the Pulse was just getting started. Emily's days blurred into a whirlwind of meetings, tests, and late-night strategy sessions at the Foundation facility, where the pressure to push the Pulse technology forward was palpable. Ava and the team worked tirelessly to refine the Gen 2 node's algorithms, ensuring they could not only react to crises but also learn from each emergency to improve future responses. Despite the excitement, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was unfolding beneath the surface. It wasn't just the cyber attacks, they were a symptom, a warning sign. The real battle was over control. Early one morning, Emily received a discreet message from a man who called himself Jack Whitman, a former intelligence analyst turned cybersecurity consultant. Jack claimed to have information about the factions fighting for the Pulse technology, some within Foundation itself and others lurking in the shadows of corporate America. Meeting in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Reno, Emily listened as Jack outlined a complex web of alliances, betrayals, and covert operations. According to him, a coalition of energy conglomerates and government agencies was orchestrating a campaign to seize the Pulse system and limit its distribution to elite clients only. They feared that democratizing such a powerful tool would upend the existing balance of power. It's bigger than just saving lives, Jack said, voice low and urgent. This is about who controls the future of energy and emergency response worldwide. Emily's stomach churned. She had hoped Foundation was a united front. Now she realized it was a battleground, and she was caught in the crossfire. Back at the facility, she confronted Ava with the revelations. Ava's face hardened. I've suspected this from the start. Some of our own people have been compromised. We can't trust everyone. Trust, Emily thought bitterly, was a fragile thing in a world built on secrecy. As tensions escalated, Foundation leaders called an emergency summit. Representatives from tech companies, humanitarian groups, government agencies, and private security firms gathered to discuss the Pulse project's future. Emily found herself in the middle of a heated debate. One faction argued for immediate open-source release, pushing for transparency and global access. Another faction insisted on tighter controls and licensing agreements to prevent misuse. The room crackled with conflict, alliances shifting like sand. Emily spoke up, her voice steady but passionate. If we cage this technology, people will die. Pulse isn't a weapon, it's a lifeline. We owe it to the world to share it openly, to empower communities to protect themselves. Her words struck a chord with many, but others dismissed her idealism as naive. After the summit, Emily received an encrypted file from an anonymous source containing leaked emails and internal memos. The documents detailed plans to sabotage the Foundation's next public demonstration of the Gen 2 node, aiming to discredit the project and justify a government takeover. She knew she had to act fast. Rallying Ava and trusted team members, they devised a counterplan, a covert operation to secure key pulse nodes across the country and deploy mobile units to vulnerable areas ahead of predicted disasters. Emily took charge of coordinating with emergency response teams, working late into the night to ensure seamless integration. Meanwhile, whispers of a mole within Foundation grew louder. Suspicion poisoned relationships, and paranoia crept in. One evening, Emily found evidence that sensitive information was being siphoned from their secure network. The betrayal cut deep. Was it someone she trusted? As the storm outside intensified, she realized the fight for Pulse was no longer just about technology, it was a battle for humanity's future. Yet amid the chaos, moments of hope emerged. A small town in Kansas, hit by tornadoes, reported miraculous preservation of power thanks to Pulse mobile units. A refugee camp in Syria communicated safely during an airstrike because Pulse maintained their communications. These victories were bittersweet, reminders of why the stakes were so high. Emily's resolve hardened. She would protect this invention, not just for the Foundation, but for every life it could save. But the question lingered, could she survive the coming betrayals and keep the pulse beating for the world? Emily sat alone in the dim glow of the Foundation's secure command center, staring at the scrolling lines of code and network logs on the massive screen before her. Every detail mattered, the slightest anomaly could signal a breach, a sabotage attempt, or worse. Since uncovering the mole within their ranks, the atmosphere at Foundation had shifted from hopeful innovation to tense suspicion. Ava had become more guarded, meetings were held behind closed doors, and trust was in short supply. Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Who could betray a cause so vital? Who would risk millions of lives just for power or profit? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime, an encrypted message from an unknown sender. The text was brief but chilling, "You don't know the half of it. Meet me at the old railway station at midnight." The message contained a GPS coordinate and a single word, truth. Despite her instincts warning her to be cautious, Emily knew she couldn't ignore it. If there was more to the conspiracy than she realized, she had to uncover it. That night, wrapped in a coat against the cool desert air, she drove alone to the abandoned railway station on the outskirts of Reno. The station was a relic, its wooden beams weathered, the silence heavy with forgotten history. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a man in a dark hoodie, his face obscured. "You came," he said quietly. "I'm David. I used to work here, for Foundation, before I realized what was really going on." Emily's heart quickened. "What do you mean?" "Pulse isn't just a life-saving technology," he said. "It's a tool for surveillance. The Gen 2 nodes can monitor communications, track movements, and even control energy access remotely. Some factions want to use that power to control populations, enforce compliance." Emily felt a cold shiver. The very technology she hoped would free people might become a cage. "Isn't there a way to prevent that?" she asked. "Only if we expose the truth," David said. "But you're walking a dangerous path. They'll stop at nothing to keep this quiet." Before she could respond, headlights flashed nearby. A car sped past, then screeched to a halt at the station entrance. The man cursed under his breath. "Go. I'll distract them." Emily hesitated but then ran, disappearing into the night. Back at Foundation, she relayed the encounter to Ava, who listened grimly. "We knew some of this," Ava admitted. "But having it confirmed, it changes everything." The revelation sparked fierce debate within the leadership. Some argued for immediate public disclosure, hoping transparency would safeguard against abuse. Others feared mass panic and government crackdown. Meanwhile, the mole's sabotage attempts grew bolder, system outages, misinformation campaigns, even physical threats against staff. Emily found herself constantly looking over her shoulder. Yet amid the turmoil, she found solace in Lily's innocent smile, a reminder of what she was fighting for. One afternoon, a breakthrough came when Emily discovered a hidden subroutine buried deep in the Gen 2 node's code, an override mechanism that could disable monitoring functions without shutting down critical systems. This discovery gave her hope that Pulse could be both powerful and ethical. She worked tirelessly with the engineers to implement safeguards, ensuring user privacy and control. But trust was fragile. When an insider leaked information about the override to hostile parties, Emily faced the hardest choice of her life: protect the project by silencing dissent or risk everything by standing for transparency. She chose the latter, rallying her allies and publicly revealing the threats against Pulse. The response was electric. Media outlets erupted with debate. Some hailed Pulse as a revolutionary lifesaver, others warned of dystopian surveillance. Protests erupted outside Foundation's gates. The government launched investigations. In the eye of the storm, Emily stood firm. "Technology alone can't save us," she told a crowd of reporters. "It's how we choose to use it that defines our future." As public scrutiny intensified, Foundation became a target for cyber attacks and misinformation. Yet, Pulse nodes continued to activate during crises, quietly saving lives even as the world watched the drama unfold. One night, as Emily prepared to leave the facility, she found a letter slipped under her door. It was unsigned but carried a message that chilled her to the bone: "They're coming for you next." Fear and determination warred inside her. The stakes were higher than ever. But Emily knew she couldn't back down, not when millions depended on the Pulse. The future was uncertain, but her resolve was clear. The battle for humanity's lifeline had only just begun. The day of the first large-scale public test of the Gen 2 Pulse node dawned clear but tense. Months of preparation, sleepless nights, and covert battles had led Emily and the Foundation team to this moment. The eyes of the world were watching, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The test site was set near Sacramento, a region known for its vulnerability to wildfires and electrical outages. Local emergency responders, media crews, government officials, and a select audience of tech experts had gathered to witness the technology in action. Emily's nerves twisted inside her as she checked the final systems from the command center. Ava stood beside her, calm and focused, fingers flying over her tablet. "Ready?" Ava asked. Emily nodded, swallowing hard. "Let's do this." As the sun climbed higher, an artificial simulation of a wildfire was triggered in a controlled forest patch miles away. The Gen 2 node sensors picked up the smoke and heat within seconds, sending alerts across the network. Instantly, mobile pulse units dispatched to affected areas, rerouting power from non-essential grids to emergency services, activating drone reconnaissance, and establishing secure communications channels. Emily watched the data stream in, evacuation routes mapped in real time, hospital systems bolstered, emergency shelters illuminated. The system was performing flawlessly. But then the simulation threw an unexpected curve, a sudden, severe electrical surge designed to test the node's resilience. The lights flickered. Monitors flashed warnings. The system hesitated, but then recalibrated, isolating the surge and protecting critical infrastructure. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the control room. "That was close," Ava muttered, eyes scanning the readouts. The test continued with other variables: cyber attack attempts, infrastructure failures, communication blackouts, and the Pulse node adapted each time, learning, evolving. Emily felt a swell of pride mixed with exhaustion. After hours of simulated chaos, the system stabilized, and the test concluded successfully. As applause erupted in the observation room, Emily stepped outside into the crisp evening air. She spotted Lily waiting by the perimeter fence, holding her father's hand, eyes wide with curiosity. "Mommy!" Lily ran toward her, and Emily scooped her up, relief washing over her. But amid the celebration, Emily couldn't ignore the nagging sense of vulnerability. The earlier warnings, the threats, the mole, the attempts to control or destroy Pulse, were still very real. That night, after the crowd had dispersed, Emily received an urgent call. A wildfire had broken out unexpectedly in a nearby town. The Gen 2 node sensors had detected it early, but the local power grid was compromised, and communications were spotty. Emily and Ava sprang into action, coordinating with local officials and deploying mobile units. The Pulse system activated autonomously, rerouting power to firefighting equipment, maintaining hospital energy, and guiding evacuations with live updates. Emily monitored the crisis as hours stretched on, tension mounting with every passing moment. At one point, communications went silent, an attack on the network, possibly a coordinated sabotage. But Pulse's fail-safes kicked in, establishing backup connections and preserving critical functions. The town's residents were evacuated safely, damage minimized far beyond what traditional emergency systems could have managed. By dawn, the fire was contained, and the Pulse had proven its worth under real-world pressure. Exhausted but exhilarated, Emily stood among the first responders, feeling the weight of the moment. This was what she had fought for, a technology that could save millions of lives when disaster struck. Yet as she looked around, she realized the battle was far from over. The powerful forces arrayed against Pulse were still lurking, waiting for their moment. And Emily knew the next challenge would be even harder. But for now, she allowed herself a brief smile. The Pulse was alive. It was working. And hope was pulsing through the heart of humanity's future. In the weeks following the successful public test near Sacramento, Emily's world shifted into overdrive. The Pulse technology had proven its potential, but the ripple effects were immediate and intense. Media outlets hailed it as a groundbreaking lifesaver, while skeptics and powerful opponents ramped up their criticism. Every day brought new headlines, praise from communities saved, warnings from privacy advocates, and ominous stories about government interest in controlling the system. Emily sat in the Foundation's war room, surrounded by screens displaying news feeds, social media chatter, and real-time Pulse activity across the country. Ava stood beside her, her expression grim. "They're mobilizing faster than we expected," Ava said. "Lobbyists, regulators, corporate backers, they want to stake their claim on Pulse before we can make it truly open." Emily clenched her fists. "We can't let them hijack this." But the pressure wasn't just external. Internal divisions within Foundation deepened as some leaders pushed for compromises, licensing deals, partnerships with major utilities, even government contracts. Others, including Emily, argued for transparency and accessibility. The debate threatened to fracture the very team that had built Pulse from the ground up. One evening, after a heated board meeting, Emily returned to her office to find an anonymous package waiting. Inside was a flash drive and a note: "They're closer than you think. Watch your back." Plugging the drive into a secure terminal, Emily uncovered a trove of confidential communications revealing a coordinated effort by energy conglomerates and political operatives to undermine Pulse. The files detailed plans to manipulate public opinion, sabotage deployments, and pressure regulatory agencies to impose restrictive controls. The scale of the opposition shocked her. But it also steeled her resolve. That night, she convened a secret meeting with trusted allies. "We have to fight smarter," she said. "Not just with technology, but with people. We need to build alliances, activists, local governments, international partners." Ava nodded. "And we need to shore up Pulse's defenses. The cyber attacks will get worse." Meanwhile, Pulse's network quietly expanded, activating in disaster zones nationwide: hurricanes in Florida, floods in the Midwest, earthquakes in California. Each deployment brought success stories and saved lives, but also increased scrutiny. In Washington, lawmakers grilled Foundation executives in tense hearings, debating Pulse's implications for national security and privacy. Emily testified with passion, advocating for the technology's benefits while acknowledging legitimate concerns. "We're building safeguards," she assured. "But turning back now would mean condemning millions to unnecessary suffering. Outside the political arena, Emily met ordinary people transformed by Pulse's reach, a single mother whose power stayed on during a heatwave, a firefighter who credited the node with saving her team, a small-town mayor who saw his community connected for the first time during a crisis. Their stories fueled her determination. Yet the threats grew personal. Late one night, as she left the foundation building, Emily noticed a shadow trailing her. Heart racing, she quickened her pace, finally losing the figure in a crowded street. The message was clear: the fight for Pulse was no longer just professional, it was a matter of survival. With stakes this high, Emily understood that every move counted. She began to train herself in cybersecurity, self-defense, and crisis management, preparing for the battles ahead. As tension mounted, unexpected support arrived. A coalition of grassroots organizations, tech innovators, and human rights groups rallied behind Pulse, amplifying its mission and pushing back against attempts to control or silence it. Social media campaigns went viral, community forums buzzed with activism, and petitions called for government transparency. Emily felt a surge of hope. The Pulse wasn't just a machine, it was a movement. Yet beneath the optimism, she remained vigilant. The shadow war was intensifying, and the next storm, whether literal or political, could break everything. In a quiet moment, holding Lily close, Emily whispered, "I promise, no matter what, I won't let this invention become a weapon against the people it was meant to save." The pulse of hope beat strong inside her, ready to face whatever came next. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. It happened on a bright autumn morning when news broke that a major city in Texas was facing an unprecedented blackout amid a fierce storm. The Pulse Gen 2 node had been installed there only weeks earlier, still fresh and untested in such a critical environment. Emily sat in the command center, eyes glued to the screens tracking the power grids, weather patterns, and emergency communications. The storm was intensifying, and the blackout was growing. This was the moment Pulse had been built for, to prove its worth in the crucible of disaster. But as the system kicked in, something went wrong. Alarms blared. Data streams sputtered. The node's network faltered, and for the first time, the technology seemed vulnerable. Panic threatened to engulf the team. Ava's fingers flew across her keyboard as she raced to diagnose the issue. "It's not a technical fault," she said grimly. "Someone's attacking the network. It's a coordinated cyber assault, targeting the core Pulse infrastructure." The reality hit Emily like a punch to the gut. The enemies they'd faced in whispers and shadows had now launched an all-out offensive. "We have to hold," Emily said, voice steady despite the chaos. "For the city, for everyone depending on us." As the storm raged outside, the battle unfolded inside. Hackers probed and pierced the defenses, flooding the system with false data, attempting to shut down vital functions. But Pulse was designed with resilience in mind. Backup protocols kicked in, rerouting energy flows, isolating compromised nodes, and maintaining critical communications. Emily coordinated with local officials, emergency responders, and cybersecurity experts in real time. The stakes could not have been higher. Outside the control room, news crews broadcast the crisis live. Public opinion teetered between hope and fear. If Pulse failed now, it could lose everything. Hours stretched into an agonizing night, but gradually, the system stabilized. The blackout was contained and rolled back faster than any previous outage in the city's history. Emergency services remained operational, and residents were kept informed through secure communication channels. As dawn broke, exhaustion gave way to cautious celebration. Pulse had endured the attack. But the victory was bittersweet. The assault was a stark reminder of the power struggle surrounding the technology. Emily knew that the next move by their adversaries would be even more ruthless. In the days that followed, the political fallout was immediate. Some officials praised Pulse as a savior, urging wider deployment and increased funding. Others called for strict regulations, fearing that the vulnerabilities revealed could be exploited by hostile actors or governments. Foundation faced investigations, lawsuits, and demands for transparency. Amid the chaos, Emily found unexpected allies in the tech community and grassroots activists, who rallied to defend Pulse's mission and integrity. But trust was fragile. One night, Emily received an encrypted message warning that a mole within Foundation planned to leak sensitive information to the opposition. The betrayal cut deep. She launched a covert internal investigation, navigating a labyrinth of deception and intrigue. The pressure weighed heavily on her, but she drew strength from the growing network of supporters who believed in the vision behind Pulse. Meanwhile, Ava and the engineering team worked tirelessly to patch vulnerabilities, enhance encryption, and develop new protocols to prevent future attacks. They deployed rapid updates to all nodes, transforming Pulse into a more adaptive and secure system. As the dust settled, Emily took a moment to reflect on how far they had come, from a bold idea sparked by Elon Musk's visionary invention to a frontline defender of human resilience. She thought about Lily and the future she wanted to protect, a world where technology empowered rather than enslaved. In a heartfelt speech at a global technology summit, Emily laid out a vision for Pulse's future, one rooted in transparency, community partnership, and ethical innovation. Her words resonated deeply. Technology must serve humanity, not control it, she said. Our strength lies not just in our inventions, but in our courage to stand up for what's right. The tipping point had arrived. Pulse was no longer just a project, it was a movement, a beacon of hope amid a world of uncertainty. And Emily was ready to lead the charge, whatever storms lay ahead. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Emily had long suspected there was a mole within Foundation, someone leaking critical data to their adversaries, but the truth was more painful than she imagined. Late one night, after weeks of covert digital forensics and relentless surveillance, Ava finally called her into a secure room, her face pale but resolute. "We found them," Ava said quietly, sliding a file across the table. The file contained logs, encrypted emails, and timestamps meticulously traced back to one of their own, a senior engineer named Marcus Reed. Marcus had been with Foundation since the earliest days, a brilliant but guarded man whose expertise in network security was unmatched. But beneath the professional veneer, he had been feeding Pulse's vulnerabilities to a shadowy coalition of corporate and political interests determined to control or destroy the technology. Emily felt a wrench in her chest. Betrayal from within was the deepest cut of all. She confronted Marcus the next morning in the sterile conference room where decisions that shaped the future were made. His calm demeanor cracked as she laid out the evidence. "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you do this to us?" Marcus's eyes flickered with conflicted emotion. "You don't understand what's at stake," he whispered. "Pulse isn't just saving lives, it's shifting power. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could become a weapon more dangerous than any disaster. I'm trying to protect us." Emily shook her head, disbelief mingling with sorrow. "There are better ways than betrayal." The confrontation shattered the fragile trust that held Foundation together. Some staff sided with Marcus, seeing him as a whistleblower exposing hidden dangers. Others rallied around Emily and Ava, determined to safeguard the project's mission. The internal struggle threatened to unravel everything they had built. Meanwhile, the opposition seized the moment, amplifying divisions through media leaks and misinformation campaigns. Foundation's reputation teetered on the brink. Emily found herself navigating a political minefield, balancing transparency with security. She authorized a full internal audit, strengthened cybersecurity protocols, and reached out to trusted partners for support. The pressure was relentless. As the investigation continued, Emily couldn't ignore the toll on her personal life. Sleepless nights and constant vigilance wore down her spirit. Lily's innocent questions about Mommy's work reminded her why she fought so hard. She promised herself she would protect not just the future of Pulse, but the future for her daughter. The climax came when Marcus, confronted with overwhelming evidence and facing legal consequences, agreed to cooperate. He disclosed critical details about the coalition's plans, their methods, and key players working to sabotage Pulse from within and outside Foundation. The information was a double-edged sword, devastating in its scope, but invaluable for mounting a counteroffensive. Armed with Marcus's insights, Emily and Ava coordinated with law enforcement and cybersecurity agencies to dismantle the hostile network. Foundation launched a public campaign to restore confidence, emphasizing the lessons learned and the strengthened safeguards now in place. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Pulse deployments resumed with renewed vigor, proving indispensable in disaster zones across the country. Emily's leadership during the crisis earned her respect and admiration, but she remained humble, aware that the battle for Pulse's future was ongoing. In quiet moments, she reflected on the nature of trust, power, and sacrifice. The betrayal had been a painful chapter, but it had also forged a stronger, more resilient foundation. And through it all, one truth remained clear: the mission to save lives, to protect humanity's fragile spark, was bigger than any one person or obstacle. As Emily prepared to address the world at a global summit, she thought of the countless lives touched by Pulse and the countless more yet to be saved. "We have faced darkness within and without," she told the assembled crowd, her voice steady and filled with conviction, "but together, we are stronger. Together, we will ensure that this invention remains a force for good, a beacon of hope for generations to come." The betrayal had revealed painful truths, but it had also illuminated the path forward. A path fueled by courage, unity, and unwavering hope. The sun rose over a landscape still scarred by recent storms and blackouts, but beneath the surface, a new energy was building. Foundation's Pulse technology was no longer just a tool, it was becoming a global movement, spreading beyond borders and reshaping how the world faced disaster and crisis. Emily stood at the helm, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of possibility. After months of internal struggles, betrayals, and battles on multiple fronts, Pulse was ready for its next evolution. It was time to think bigger. The first step was international collaboration. Emily had spent weeks building bridges with humanitarian organizations, foreign governments, and technology leaders from around the globe. The challenges facing the world, climate change, pandemics, cyber warfare, were too vast and interconnected for any one nation to tackle alone. Pulse offered a solution that transcended borders, a system that could unify disparate infrastructures into a resilient, life-saving network. The Foundation's headquarters buzzed with activity as new teams arrived, engineers from Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America, bringing diverse perspectives and expertise. Emily embraced this influx of ideas, knowing that innovation thrived on diversity. As they adapted Pulse to new environments, dense urban centers, remote villages, disaster-prone regions, the team faced fresh challenges. Power grids varied wildly, communication systems were fragmented, and local cultures had unique needs and concerns. Emily traveled extensively, meeting with community leaders and local officials, listening to their stories, fears, and hopes. She knew that for Pulse to succeed, it had to be more than technology, it had to be trust, partnership, and empowerment. In one village nestled in the Andes, where landslides regularly cut off access to essential services, Pulse was deployed with mobile units powered by solar energy. The locals marveled as their schools, clinics, and emergency centers remained operational during storms. Children who once feared disaster now felt safer, their lives connected to a global network of care. In coastal cities threatened by rising seas and hurricanes, Pulse integrated with advanced sensors to provide early warnings and coordinate evacuations. Emergency responders used augmented reality interfaces developed by Foundation to navigate flooded streets and collapsed infrastructure. The impact was profound and immediate. Back at home, Emily faced new political and logistical hurdles. The expansion of Pulse drew scrutiny from global powers wary of sharing critical infrastructure data. Cybersecurity threats evolved, requiring constant vigilance and rapid adaptation. Yet the spirit of collaboration endured, fueled by the undeniable proof of Pulse's life-saving potential. Amid these changes, Emily found moments of personal growth. She deepened her bond with Lily, teaching her about resilience, kindness, and the importance of standing up for what matters. She reconnected with her mother, healing old wounds and embracing the strength of family. The story of Pulse was no longer just hers, it was a shared narrative of hope, courage, and transformation. One memorable evening, Emily stood before an international summit, addressing leaders and visionaries from around the world. Her voice carried the weight of experience and the spark of optimism. "We are at a crossroads," she declared. "The challenges we face are daunting, but our capacity to overcome them is greater than ever. Pulse is not just technology. It is a commitment to life, to community, and to the future we build together." The crowd erupted in applause, signaling a new chapter for Pulse and for humanity's relationship with technology. As the applause died down, Emily reflected on the journey, the hardships, the betrayals, the breakthroughs. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but with every challenge came opportunity. Pulse was lighting the way. And millions of lives were being saved, one heartbeat at a time. As Pulse expanded its reach across continents and disaster zones, Emily soon realized that the story behind the invention wasn't just about technology and politics, it was about the human cost, the sacrifices made behind the scenes, and the raw emotions that tethered everyone involved to the mission. Behind the glowing headlines and the tech triumphs were sleepless nights, strained relationships, and the constant weight of responsibility that bore down on her and her team. Emily had always known the stakes were high, but it was only after visiting a disaster-stricken region in the Gulf Coast that she truly grasped the emotional toll. She arrived in a small coastal town where Pulse had recently helped restore power and communication after a devastating hurricane. The town's residents were weary but grateful. Among them was Maria, a nurse who had worked around the clock in the flooded hospital, relying on Pulse's stable energy supply to keep life-saving machines running. Maria's story was a poignant reminder of what was at stake, how each node wasn't just a piece of tech, but a lifeline to real people with hopes, fears, and families. Emily spent time with Maria and other locals, listening as they shared their experiences. The exhaustion in their voices, the tears for lost loved ones, the resilience in their smiles, all of it fueled Emily's commitment. Yet, back at Foundation headquarters, the personal sacrifices were just as profound. Ava, once a steadfast second-in-command, began showing signs of burnout. The relentless pressure, the cyber attacks, the political battles, they wore on her spirit. Emily watched as Ava withdrew, pushing herself harder while hiding her fatigue behind a mask of determination. One late night, Emily found Ava sitting alone in the dark, the glow of her computer reflecting the strain in her eyes. "We can't keep this pace," Ava confessed quietly. "I'm scared we're losing ourselves in the fight." Emily nodded, understanding all too well. The fight to save millions was exacting a heavy toll on the very people trying to make it happen. Their families, too, bore the burden. Emily's relationship with Lily became her anchor, a sanctuary from the storm. But balancing motherhood and the mission was a constant struggle. She missed milestones and quiet moments, trading them for strategy meetings and crisis calls. One afternoon, Lily asked, "Mommy, why do you work so much? Can you stay with me?" The innocence of the question pierced Emily's heart. "I'm doing this so you and everyone else can be safe," she replied, holding her daughter close. But the guilt lingered. Within Foundation, tensions rose as some team members questioned the sustainability of the relentless schedule and the emotional costs. Support groups formed quietly, but the stigma around vulnerability persisted. Emily recognized that to sustain Pulse's mission, she had to prioritize the well-being of her people as much as the technology. She advocated for mental health resources, flexible work schedules, and moments of respite amid chaos. The story of Pulse wasn't just about saving lives during disasters, it was about protecting the lives of those who fought behind the scenes. The human cost was a delicate balance, one that required courage, compassion, and honesty. As the months passed, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The fight for Pulse's future demanded more than innovation, it demanded a new kind of leadership, one that embraced vulnerability and strength in equal measure. In a heartfelt address to the Foundation team, she shared her own struggles and urged openness and support. "We are the heartbeat of this mission," she said. "If we lose ourselves, we lose everything we've built. Together, we must care for each other as fiercely as we care for the world outside." That message resonated deeply, sparking a cultural shift within Foundation. The team emerged stronger, more connected, and more determined than ever. The human cost was real, but so was the human spirit. And in the heart of it all, Emily found renewed purpose. Knowing that every sacrifice was a thread woven into the fabric of a future where technology saved not just millions of lives, but preserved the humanity behind those lives. The victory of Pulse's rapid expansion came with an unexpected shadow, a creeping doubt that began to infiltrate the Foundation and the public's perception. Despite the overwhelming evidence of Pulse's life-saving capabilities, whispers of mistrust and conspiracy theories started to circulate. Emily knew the road to acceptance was never smooth, but the magnitude of the backlash surprised even her. It began subtly with social media posts questioning Pulse's safety, its data privacy policies, and the intentions behind its rapid deployment. Rumors spread that Pulse was a surveillance tool disguised as a humanitarian invention, that the data collected was being sold to corporations or governments, or worse, weaponized. Foundation's PR team worked tirelessly to counter misinformation, but the digital wildfire was relentless. Some reports even alleged that Pulse's technology had failed in certain regions, downplaying successes and magnifying isolated technical glitches. The onslaught shook the team. Some of Emily's closest allies doubted whether the mission was sustainable in the face of mounting skepticism. Investors wavered, funding was delayed, and regulators threatened to impose restrictions. Emily felt the familiar sting of frustration but refused to yield. She knew that transparency was the only way forward. She initiated an unprecedented campaign of openness, publishing detailed technical reports, hosting live Q&A sessions with engineers and experts, and inviting independent audits of Pulse's systems. She even opened the Foundation's doors to journalists and critics willing to see the truth firsthand. Yet, the shadows of doubt were not merely external. Within Foundation, some team members began to question the project's trajectory and ethical implications. Had Pulse become too powerful, too centralizing? Could a single technology truly serve all without compromising privacy or autonomy? These internal debates were intense and sometimes divisive. Emily encouraged open dialogue, believing that wrestling with hard questions was essential for growth. She assembled an ethics committee comprised of technologists, philosophers, human rights advocates, and community representatives to guide Pulse's development with moral clarity. The committee's recommendations led to important policy changes, stricter data protection protocols, opt-in community participation models, and independent oversight mechanisms. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Public forums and town hall meetings became platforms for engagement rather than confrontation. Stories of Pulse saving lives in remote villages, aiding pandemic responses, and restoring power after natural disasters resonated more deeply than the rumors. But Emily remained vigilant. She understood that the shadows of doubt stemmed not just from fear of technology but from deeper societal anxieties, about control, privacy, and the pace of change. In response, she launched educational initiatives aimed at demystifying Pulse, technology, and their impact on everyday lives. Schools, libraries, and community centers hosted workshops and interactive exhibits. People began to see Pulse not as an abstract concept but as a tangible force for good, built by people like them. The turning point came during a high-profile international conference where Emily faced a panel of skeptical journalists and experts. She welcomed their toughest questions and answered with honesty and humility. "We don't claim perfection," she said. "But we are committed to learning, adapting, and listening. Pulse exists to serve humanity, not to dominate it. And that mission guides every decision we make." The moment was electric. Some critics softened their tone, others remained cautious, but the conversation shifted from suspicion to engagement. In the quiet moments afterward, Emily reflected on the paradox of innovation, the simultaneous promise and peril. She thought about Elon Musk's original vision, how it sparked not just a technological breakthrough but a cultural reckoning. The shadows of doubt would likely never disappear entirely, but they had been illuminated, confronted, and tempered by truth. Emily realized that the journey of Pulse was as much about fostering trust and understanding as about coding and engineering. It was a story of human resilience in the face of uncertainty. And as Pulse continued to light up communities around the world, Emily held on to hope, that with courage, transparency, and empathy, even the darkest shadows could be turned into guiding light. The journey of Pulse was never linear. Every breakthrough was accompanied by unforeseen setbacks, every success shadowed by new challenges. As Emily and her team pushed the technology to new frontiers, they encountered problems that tested their resolve and ingenuity in equal measure. One of the most ambitious projects was integrating Pulse into emergency medical systems worldwide, enabling real-time data sharing between hospitals, ambulances, and disaster response units. The vision was to create a seamless network that could track patient status, coordinate care, and accelerate treatment during crises. Early trials in several metropolitan hospitals showed promising results. Patient outcomes improved, emergency response times decreased, and coordination between agencies became more efficient. But as the system scaled, technical glitches emerged. Data synchronization issues led to conflicting patient records, causing confusion and delays. Some hospitals reported cyber intrusions targeting their PulseLink systems, forcing temporary shutdowns. The emotional toll on healthcare workers was immense. They had trusted the new system to save lives, only to confront unexpected failures. Emily spent long nights with the medical teams, listening, troubleshooting, and reassuring them. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We will learn and improve." Meanwhile, environmental challenges tested Pulse's hardware resilience. In tropical regions with high humidity, critical components corroded faster than anticipated. In arid desert zones, dust storms clogged sensors and disrupted communication. Engineering teams scrambled to develop weatherproof casings and redundant systems, often working in extreme conditions alongside local volunteers. The setbacks delayed deployment timelines and strained budgets. Investors grew anxious, and media narratives shifted from celebration to skepticism. But Emily refused to let fear dictate their path. She reminded her team, innovation is built on persistence. Every failure teaches us how to build better. At the same time, Pulse's software algorithms faced ethical scrutiny. Machine learning models used to predict disaster impact and resource needs showed bias toward urban areas with richer data availability, unintentionally sidelining remote and underserved communities. The revelation sparked outrage among advocacy groups and fueled debates on technological equity. Emily convened an emergency summit of data scientists, ethicists, and community leaders. Together, they redesigned the models to incorporate diverse data sources and community input, creating more inclusive and accurate predictions. The process took months but resulted in a system more reflective of real-world complexities. This episode deepened Emily's conviction that technology must serve justice, not just efficiency. Through these trials, personal sacrifices mounted. Ava took a leave of absence to recover from burnout, leaving a leadership gap that Emily struggled to fill. The pressure mounted at home, with Lily growing more aware of her mother's absences and stress. Emily grappled with balancing the monumental demands of Pulse's evolution with the intimacy of motherhood. One night, after a particularly grueling board meeting, she returned home to find Lily asleep clutching a drawing, a picture of Pulse as a shining star over a city. It was a simple yet profound reminder of why she fought. The breakthroughs, despite the setbacks, fueled a renewed sense of purpose. When Pulse finally stabilized its medical integration, hospitals reported life-saving interventions that would have been impossible before. In remote regions, ruggedized Pulse units maintained communication during cyclones and earthquakes, coordinating timely evacuations and aid deliveries. The stories poured in, families reunited, children saved, communities reborn. Emily realized that setbacks were part of the journey, not its end. They were the crucibles in which true innovation was forged. Each challenge refined Pulse, each failure sharpened their vision. The mission was no longer about a single invention but about a movement, one defined by resilience, empathy, and relentless hope. As the chapter closed, Emily looked toward the horizon, ready for the next wave of breakthroughs and the inevitable trials to come. She understood that the path to saving millions was paved with grit, grace, and an unwavering belief in the power of human spirit intertwined with technology. The vision for Pulse had always been global, but reaching that scale meant weaving together a complex tapestry of technology, diplomacy, and human collaboration unlike anything Emily had ever attempted. As Pulse's technology matured, the foundation set its sights on building a true global network, an interconnected system that could anticipate, respond to, and mitigate disasters anywhere on the planet in real time. The challenge was monumental. Each country had unique infrastructure, regulations, and political climates. Some regions welcomed the technology with open arms, eager for the protection it promised. Others viewed it with suspicion or outright resistance, wary of external influence or perceived loss of sovereignty. Emily spent countless hours navigating international summits, negotiating partnerships, and aligning diverse stakeholders. It was a diplomatic dance as delicate as any in history, where trust had to be earned one handshake at a time. The technical hurdles were equally daunting. Integrating Pulse's system across fragmented power grids, communication networks, and emergency services required custom solutions. Teams worked around the clock to develop adaptable protocols that could operate with varying levels of internet connectivity, energy supply, and local infrastructure. They designed modular hardware that could be quickly deployed and scaled, from dense urban centers to the most remote villages. In regions prone to conflict or instability, Foundation partnered with NGOs and local leaders to ensure Pulse's deployment was safe, ethical, and community-driven. Emily believed that true resilience came from empowering people as much as technology. One milestone came when Pulse successfully linked emergency services in 3 continents during a massive earthquake that struck the Pacific Rim. The network coordinated rescue efforts across borders, shared real-time data on aftershocks, and prioritized resources where they were most needed. It was the first time in history that such a coordinated international response was possible with this level of speed and precision. News outlets around the world hailed it as a breakthrough in humanitarian aid, and the stories of lives saved fueled a wave of support. Yet the scale of the global network brought new vulnerabilities. Cybersecurity threats intensified as Pulse became a bigger target for hackers, state-sponsored attacks, and cybercriminals. Foundation's cybersecurity teams ramped up defenses, deploying AI-driven intrusion detection and collaborating with global security agencies. The stakes were no longer theoretical, a breach could cripple emergency responses and cost lives. The pressure on Emily's team was relentless, with long hours and little margin for error. But the resilience of the team shone through. Their commitment was fueled by the faces of those who depended on Pulse, children, families, communities who saw it as a lifeline. Amid the technical and political battles, Emily never lost sight of the human stories behind the network. She traveled to partner sites around the world, meeting local heroes, volunteers coordinating evacuations in the Philippines, doctors in refugee camps relying on Pulse for telemedicine, engineers restoring power in war-torn regions. Each encounter deepened her resolve to build not just a system but a global family bound by shared purpose. To foster this unity, Emily launched the Pulse Global Forum, an annual gathering of partners, experts, and community leaders. The forum was a space for sharing knowledge, celebrating successes, and confronting challenges. It became a beacon of hope, symbolizing what was possible when humanity came together across borders. As the network grew, so did its impact. Pulse's early warning saved millions from floods in South Asia, its rapid coordination aided wildfire evacuations in Australia, its telemedicine units reached isolated Arctic communities. The Foundation's data showed a steady decline in casualties and economic losses in Pulse-covered regions. But Emily knew that no system was perfect. There were still gaps, areas too remote, too volatile, or simply overlooked. She pushed her team to innovate, to keep reaching further, to never settle. The journey to a fully interconnected global safety net was ongoing, a marathon not a sprint. In quiet moments, Emily reflected on how far they had come, from a spark of inspiration to a worldwide force for good. The global network was a testament to human ingenuity and compassion, a proof that technology could unite rather than divide. Yet she remained humble, aware that with great power came great responsibility. The pulse of humanity was fragile, but together, they had built a heartbeat strong enough to echo across the planet. The morning started like any other, with Emily scanning Pulse's global dashboards over coffee, tracking energy flows and communication nodes spanning continents. But then the alerts came, sharp, urgent, and impossible to ignore. A massive hurricane, unlike any seen before, was barreling toward the eastern seaboard of the United States, threatening millions with unprecedented destruction. The storm's size and speed overwhelmed initial forecasts, demanding a coordinated response on an enormous scale. Pulse was tasked with the critical mission of ensuring power and communication lines remained intact, facilitating emergency evacuations and medical aid. The pressure was immediate and crushing. Emily mobilized her team instantly, activating emergency protocols and coordinating with federal agencies, state governments, and local responders. The Foundation's war room became a hive of activity, engineers monitoring network stability, data scientists refining predictive models, communicators liaising with partners across affected regions. Every second mattered. As the hurricane's eye approached landfall, Pulse's nodes were put to the ultimate test. Power grids struggled but held in most areas, thanks to redundant energy storage and rapid repair teams dispatched through Pulse's network. Communication systems buzzed with activity as families checked in, emergency responders coordinated rescues, and hospitals prepared for an influx of patients. But the storm was relentless. In one coastal town, floodwaters breached levees, inundating neighborhoods and cutting off traditional evacuation routes. Pulse's localized drone units were deployed to deliver supplies and establish temporary communication links, providing a lifeline to stranded residents. Emily followed the unfolding events with a mix of pride and anxiety. The system was performing beyond expectations, but the human toll was palpable. News feeds showed harrowing images, homes destroyed, families displaced, communities in chaos. The emotional weight pressed heavily on Emily. Late into the night, she received a call from Maria, the nurse she had met years before during Pulse's early days. Maria was now coordinating a field hospital for displaced survivors. "We're overwhelmed, Emily," she said, voice trembling. "Pulse has helped keep us connected, but the need is greater than we imagined." Emily felt a familiar surge of determination. She promised to send additional resources and prioritized restoring power to critical care units. But then the crisis deepened. A cyber attack struck Pulse's network amid the hurricane, targeting emergency communication nodes in one of the hardest-hit regions. The attackers aimed to disrupt rescue efforts, exploiting the chaos to spread misinformation and panic. The breach sent shockwaves through Foundation's cybersecurity teams, who scrambled to isolate affected systems and restore integrity. For hours, parts of the network went dark, leaving responders and residents vulnerable. Emily convened an emergency summit with top security experts. The attack was sophisticated and coordinated, suggesting the involvement of hostile actors seeking to destabilize the response. The team worked tirelessly, deploying countermeasures and rebuilding trust. Public messaging emphasized resilience and unity, urging communities to rely on verified sources and Pulse's secure channels. The experience was a sobering reminder that technology's power made it a battleground, where human lives were the stakes. As the hurricane finally passed, the toll was staggering, thousands displaced, infrastructure damaged, lives upended. But the coordinated efforts enabled by Pulse had saved countless others. Rescue teams reached isolated areas faster, hospitals maintained operations, and evacuation orders were communicated clearly. In the aftermath, Emily joined Maria and local leaders for a visit to the hardest-hit communities. The devastation was raw and immediate, but so was the spirit of recovery. Volunteers cleared debris, neighbors shared resources, and survivors embraced one another. Maria thanked Emily, tears in her eyes. "Without Pulse, we would have lost so much more." The crisis underscored the profound importance of the invention, but also highlighted vulnerabilities to be addressed. Emily returned to Foundation with renewed urgency to strengthen Pulse's defenses and expand support for disaster-stricken areas. The experience reshaped the Foundation's approach to crisis management, emphasizing agility, security, and community empowerment. It also deepened Emily's understanding of the human dimension of technological innovation, the resilience, courage, and hope that sustained people through the darkest hours. As she looked out over the recovering city skyline, Emily knew the journey was far from over. Pulse had proven its worth, but new challenges awaited. The mission to save millions was a relentless call to action, demanding unwavering resolve and the belief that even in the face of crisis, humanity's brightest light could shine through. The triumphs and trials of Pulse had brought Emily to the forefront of technological innovation and humanitarian effort, but beneath the public accolades and the fast-moving projects, a quiet struggle was unfolding within her. The relentless pace, the weight of responsibility, and the personal sacrifices she'd made began to exact a toll that no amount of success could fully mask. It was a rare evening when Emily found herself alone at the Foundation's headquarters, the glow of monitors casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the city hummed with life, but inside, the silence pressed in like a physical weight. The lines between her work and personal life had blurred almost beyond recognition. Phone calls from Lily went unanswered or rushed, dinners were missed, and the simple joys of motherhood had become fleeting memories. Guilt gnawed at her, a constant companion she tried to push aside. A particularly vivid memory haunted her, a school recital Lily had performed months ago. Emily had promised she'd be there, but a last-minute crisis at Pulse had kept her away. The disappointment in her daughter's eyes had stayed with her, a silent indictment of priorities skewed by ambition and duty. It was in these quiet moments that Emily wrestled with the question, at what cost? Was saving millions of lives worth the risk of fracturing her own family? The answer was neither simple nor immediate. She had always believed that the mission was bigger than any one person, but that belief was tested by the ache of absence and the fear of losing what mattered most. One afternoon, Lily surprised her at the Foundation's offices, her small figure standing timidly in the bustling lobby. "Mom, can we go home early today?" she asked softly. Emily's heart clenched. She nodded, setting aside her tablet and taking Lily's hand. The drive home was filled with a quiet tension that neither wanted to break. Over dinner, Lily spoke about school, friends, and her longing for more time with her mother. Emily listened, the words weaving a painful reminder that life outside the mission still required attention and care. That night, Emily stayed awake long after Lily had fallen asleep, reflecting on how to bridge the widening gap. She realized that leadership was not just about steering a groundbreaking project but also about nurturing the people who anchored her world. In the weeks that followed, Emily made deliberate changes. She delegated more responsibilities within the Foundation, trusting her team to carry the mission forward. She carved out dedicated time for Lily, embracing the imperfect moments of everyday life. She sought support from friends and mentors, recognizing that strength came from connection, not isolation. The changes were neither immediate nor easy. There were setbacks, moments when work demanded more than she could give. But each step toward balance was a step toward healing. The personal reckoning also sparked a deeper understanding of leadership, one that valued empathy, vulnerability, and resilience as much as innovation and vision. Emily shared her journey openly with her team, fostering a culture where struggles could be acknowledged without fear, where the humanity behind the technology was honored. The experience enriched her role, making her not just a pioneer of invention but a beacon of authentic leadership. It also influenced Pulse's evolution. New programs were introduced to support the well-being of frontline workers and communities Pulse served. Mental health resources, flexible work models, and community-building initiatives became integral parts of the Foundation's ethos. Emily saw these efforts as extensions of Pulse's mission, saving lives not just through technology but through compassion and care. As she watched Lily grow, Emily carried the lesson that true success was measured not only by the lives saved in the aggregate but by the love and presence offered to those closest to her. The invention that could save millions was powerful, but the bonds of family and self-care were the foundation upon which all else stood. This chapter of her life was a testament to the complexity of progress, the intertwining of personal and professional, the cost of greatness, and the possibility of redemption. Emily knew the road ahead would continue to demand sacrifices and courage, but she also knew that embracing her own humanity was the most vital step in leading a future where technology and heart worked hand in hand. Pulse had grown from a bold idea into a global force, but Emily knew the journey was far from over. The tipping point, the moment when the invention would shift from a powerful tool to an indispensable part of everyday life, was on the horizon, yet fraught with complexities. As the technology expanded into new sectors, including agriculture, education, and climate resilience, Pulse's data and connectivity began to touch every facet of society. Farmers in drought-prone areas used its predictive models to conserve water and safeguard crops. Schools in underserved regions accessed teleeducation platforms through Pulse's network. Climate scientists received hyperlocal environmental data to refine their projections. These breakthroughs promised not only to save lives but to improve quality of life on a global scale. But with this expansion came unforeseen tensions. Governments debated how much control to exert over Pulse's vast data streams. Privacy advocates raised alarms about surveillance risks and data misuse. Corporations eyed the technology as a commercial goldmine, seeking to monetize access and influence. Emily found herself at the crossroads of innovation, ethics, and politics. The Foundation convened a global ethics council, bringing together voices from diverse fields: law, philosophy, technology, and community leadership. Their mandate was clear: ensure Pulse's growth was guided by principles that protected human dignity and promoted equitable access. The council's debates were intense and sometimes fractious, reflecting the high stakes involved. One of the most challenging issues was balancing transparency with security. While open data sharing empowered communities and researchers, it also exposed vulnerabilities to exploitation. Another was addressing the digital divide: how to prevent Pulse from deepening inequalities between connected and disconnected populations. Emily championed a vision of Pulse as a public good, accessible and accountable to all. She pushed for policies that limited commercialization and prioritized underserved regions. The path was not always smooth. Lobbyists and political interests challenged the Foundation's stance, seeking to carve out exclusive rights or influence algorithms to serve narrow agendas. But Emily's resolve was unwavering. The tipping point demanded not just technological prowess but principled leadership. Amid the debates, real-world events underscored Pulse's critical role. A massive wildfire season in the western United States tested the system's capacity to predict fire spread, coordinate evacuations, and manage resources. Pulse's early warnings saved countless homes and lives, validating its potential as a protector on multiple fronts. Yet, even as victories accumulated, the need for vigilance remained. Cybersecurity teams identified new threats daily, adapting defenses in an ongoing battle to safeguard the system. Emily's leadership was marked by transparency and humility. She communicated openly with the public about challenges, setbacks, and progress. Her willingness to listen and adapt earned widespread respect. Meanwhile, the Foundation expanded partnerships with universities, governments, and grassroots organizations, fostering innovation hubs that co-created solutions tailored to local needs. This decentralized approach strengthened Pulse's resilience and relevance. On a personal level, Emily found renewed strength in the relationships she had nurtured over the years: her daughter's growing independence, the unwavering support of colleagues, and the bonds forged with communities Pulse served. She balanced ambition with gratitude, understanding that the tipping point was as much about human connection as technological advance. As the chapter closed, Pulse stood at a pivotal moment, a bridge between possibility and reality, between hope and impact. The invention that had started as a spark in Emily's mind was now a beacon illuminating pathways toward a safer, more just world. But the true measure of success would be how well humanity wielded that light, guided by wisdom, compassion, and an unyielding commitment to life. The culmination of years of innovation, struggle, and triumph had brought Emily to a moment both profound and humbling. As Pulse continued to weave itself into the fabric of global society, saving lives and transforming communities, Emily reflected on the journey, the invention born from necessity, fueled by human resilience, and driven by a vision greater than herself. The public accolades and widespread adoption were gratifying, but what lingered most deeply was the lesson etched into every chapter of her story, that technology alone cannot save lives. It is the love, sacrifice, and connection between people that truly make the difference. In the quiet of her office, Emily thought back to the early days, those long nights filled with uncertainty and doubt, the sacrifices made, the moments of despair balanced by bursts of hope. She recalled the faces of those she had met along the way, Lily's innocent trust, Maria's tireless dedication, the communities who had embraced Pulse not just as a tool but as a partner in survival. The invention was powerful, but it was also fragile, dependent on humanity's capacity for empathy and collaboration. As she prepared for the next phase of Pulse's evolution, Emily resolved to embed this truth at the heart of every decision. The foundation launched a new initiative focused on education and empowerment, aiming to equip future generations with the knowledge and values to steward technology wisely. Schools incorporated Pulse-related curricula that taught not only science and engineering but also ethics, community building, and global citizenship. Emily saw this as planting seeds for a future where innovation served as a bridge rather than a barrier. The Foundation's work also expanded to include mental health support for disaster survivors and responders, recognizing that healing was as vital as physical safety. Stories poured in of lives restored, of hope rekindled amid adversity, of bonds forged in the crucible of challenge. The global family Emily had dreamed of was becoming reality, imperfect, complex, but profoundly human. On a personal note, Emily and Lily had found a new rhythm. Their relationship deepened through shared experiences and honest conversations, with Emily embracing the imperfections of balancing motherhood and leadership. They celebrated milestones together, cherishing moments once lost to work's demands. Emily learned that true strength came from vulnerability and presence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat with Lily on their porch, watching the sky turn shades of amber and violet. "Mom," Lily said softly, "I'm proud of what you've done, but I'm even prouder of who you are." The word stirred something deep within Emily, a reminder that legacy was not just measured by invention or accolades but by the love and courage shown along the way. As Pulse prepared to launch its next-generation platform, incorporating AI advancements and expanded global reach, Emily felt a surge of hope and responsibility. The future was uncertain, full of challenges yet to be imagined, but she believed in the power of collective action. She envisioned a world where disasters were met with swift compassion, where communities thrived through shared knowledge, and where technology amplified humanity's best qualities rather than diminishing them. In a keynote address to the Pulse Global Forum, Emily shared her closing thoughts: "Life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. This invention is more than circuits and codes, it's a testament to what we can achieve when we come together, when we refuse to let fear or hardship define us. The real power lies not in the technology itself, but in the hearts and hands that wield it." The applause was thunderous, but Emily knew the work was ongoing. The story of Pulse, and of humanity's resilience, was far from over. It was a new beginning, an invitation to continue dreaming, building, and loving with purpose and courage. As the crowd dispersed, Emily took a moment to look up at the stars, feeling the pulse of life beneath the vast sky, a rhythm that connected every soul, every hope, every act of kindness. The invention that could save millions had indeed done so, but its greatest gift was the reminder that every life mattered, and every heartbeat was a chance to make a difference. Even as Pulse had reshaped the way the world responded to crises and connected communities across continents, Emily understood that the journey of innovation was never truly complete. The invention that had saved millions of lives was now at a crossroads, beckoning toward uncharted frontiers. She stood at the helm of a new era, one defined not only by technological breakthroughs but by the ethical and social responsibilities that came with them. The world was changing faster than ever, with emerging challenges that tested humanity's resilience and adaptability. Climate change intensified, geopolitical tensions simmered, and inequality persisted despite progress. Pulse was no longer just a tool for disaster response, it had evolved into a platform for global collaboration, a digital ecosystem where data, ideas, and hope converged. But with this expanded role came fresh dilemmas. How could Pulse maintain its commitment to open access and equity in an era where technology increasingly became a battleground for power and control? How could it safeguard privacy while harnessing vast amounts of sensitive information? Emily convened a new advisory council, this time including voices from indigenous communities, activists, technologists, ethicists, and youth leaders from around the globe. Their mission was to chart a course that honored the diverse needs and values of the planet's inhabitants. These discussions were rich and sometimes difficult, confronting issues of consent, data sovereignty, and the risk of digital colonization. Emily listened deeply, recognizing that Pulse's future depended on humility as much as innovation. Meanwhile, the Pulse Foundation invested heavily in education and capacity building, launching initiatives that empowered local leaders to harness technology in culturally appropriate and sustainable ways. Programs supported indigenous knowledge systems, blending them with modern science to create holistic solutions. In remote villages, farmers used Pulse's AI-driven forecasts combined with traditional wisdom to protect crops from pests and drought. In urban centers, activists leveraged Pulse's network to organize community resilience projects and demand greater environmental justice. These grassroots movements inspired Emily, reminding her that technology was only as powerful as the people who wielded it. On a personal level, Emily's perspective continued to evolve. She embraced a more contemplative approach to leadership, balancing urgency with patience, ambition with listening. Her relationship with Lily deepened, the two finding joy in shared curiosity about the world's wonders and challenges. They explored nature together, discussed books and ideas, and dreamed of futures where technology served as a bridge, not a barrier. One day, Emily received an unexpected invitation to speak at a global summit on the future of humanity. Standing before an audience of world leaders, scientists, artists, and students, she shared a vision that transcended technology alone. The greatest invention, she said, is our ability to come together, to listen, to care, to act with compassion and courage. Pulse is a reflection of that spirit. It is a tool, yes, but also a reminder that our future depends on our shared humanity. Her words resonated deeply, sparking conversations that rippled through communities and institutions worldwide. As Pulse's technology advanced, incorporating quantum computing, space-based networks, and AI-driven decision-making, Emily remained grounded in the core values that had sparked its creation. She knew the road ahead would be complex, filled with triumphs and setbacks, but she also knew that with empathy, collaboration, and a commitment to justice, the invention could continue to save lives in ways once unimaginable. The horizon was vast and uncertain, but it was also bright with possibility. In the quiet moments, Emily often thought back to the question that had started it all: what if you suddenly lost everything and had no one by your side? Pulse was an answer, not a perfect one, but a beacon in the darkness, a testament to human resilience and hope. As the sun rose on a new day, Emily felt a profound sense of purpose. The invention that had saved millions was no longer just a story, it was a living, breathing force shaping a future where no one was truly alone. And beyond the horizon lay the promise of even greater impact, born from the simple but powerful truth that when we come together, we can overcome anything. The pulse of progress beat steadily onward, but for Emily, the true measure of success was no longer about invention or accolades, it was about legacy. As years passed, Pulse had become woven into the fabric of daily life, a silent guardian and a tireless partner to millions around the globe. Yet Emily knew that the greatest legacy would not be the technology itself, but the hope and resilience it inspired in people from every walk of life. With the foundation firmly established, Emily turned her attention to cultivating that legacy. She launched the Pulse Legacy Initiative, a program designed to capture stories of survival, courage, and community empowerment made possible through the invention. These stories were collected from cities, villages, and remote outposts, painting a vivid mosaic of human experience and connection. Each narrative was a thread in the larger tapestry, a testament to how technology and humanity intertwine to overcome adversity. Emily visited many of these communities herself, witnessing firsthand the profound impact Pulse had. In a coastal town battered by hurricanes, she met Clara, a schoolteacher who used Pulse's early warning system to evacuate her students just in time. Clara's eyes sparkled as she described how the community had rebuilt stronger and closer than ever. In the desert plains of Africa, she met Musa, a farmer who combined Pulse's water conservation data with ancestral knowledge to transform parched land into fertile fields. These encounters grounded Emily, reminding her that behind every statistic was a life touched, a future preserved. The Pulse Legacy Initiative also focused on education, establishing scholarships and mentorship programs for young innovators committed to humanitarian technology. Emily believed that empowering the next generation was essential to sustaining progress and fostering compassion. Through partnerships with universities and nonprofits, the initiative nurtured diverse talents, especially from underrepresented communities, ensuring that innovation was inclusive and equitable. At the global stage, Emily advocated tirelessly for policies that prioritized human well-being over profit and power. She worked with international organizations to promote digital rights, privacy protections, and ethical standards in AI and data usage. The challenges were formidable, with resistance from entrenched interests and the ever-shifting landscape of geopolitics. But Emily's vision remained clear: technology must serve as a tool for justice and dignity, not domination. On a personal note, Emily cherished the balance she had cultivated between public life and family. Lily had grown into a passionate advocate herself, inspired by her mother's journey to pursue environmental science and community activism. Together, they often reflected on the intertwined nature of progress and love, realizing that every invention was ultimately a reflection of the values that shaped it. In quieter moments, Emily found solace in nature, where the rhythm of the earth reminded her of life's enduring cycles: growth, challenge, renewal. She often sat beneath ancient trees or gazed at star-filled skies, feeling connected to something greater than herself. These reflections fueled her commitment to a future where technology and nature coexisted harmoniously. As she prepared to step back from daily operations of the foundation, Emily focused on building a leadership team grounded in empathy, vision, and integrity. She believed in the power of collective stewardship, passing the torch not just to successors but to a global community united by shared purpose. The final chapter of her active leadership was marked by a moving ceremony, attended by people from all over the world whose lives Pulse had touched. Speeches celebrated not just invention but the human spirit, resilience, kindness, and the courage to dream beyond limits. Emily's closing words resonated deeply: the true legacy of Pulse is not measured in code or machines but in the hope it has sparked and the lives it has nurtured. Our greatest invention is the enduring belief that together, we can overcome any challenge and create a future worthy of our children's dreams. The applause was long and heartfelt, a chorus of gratitude and optimism. As Emily looked out over the crowd, she felt the quiet assurance that Pulse's mission would continue to thrive, not as a solitary endeavor, but as a living movement fueled by the collective heart of humanity. The invention that began as a spark of ingenuity had grown into a beacon of hope, lighting paths through darkness and uncertainty. And in that light, millions found strength, courage, and the promise of new beginnings. The legacy was not just hers but ours. All of us who dare to dream, to build, and to love in the face of adversity. The story of Pulse was far from over. It was a living testament to the power of hope and the boundless possibilities born when technology and humanity walk hand in hand toward a better tomorrow. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?